Hey everyone, welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today into techniques for unlocking fluent English conversation. Ever feel like you're just one good strategy away from really nailing it?
Oh, for sure. And actually, what we're looking at today is kind of a shift away from like traditional textbook methods.
Yep.
It's really all about learning through real life scenarios and using practical vocabulary, which, is incredibly effective when you think about it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
for sure. One thing that really stood out to me was the focus on listening to English conversations.
hmm
Like, it's not just about memorizing all the grammar rules. It's about immersing yourself in how English is actually spoken naturally.
Right. It's almost like if you were trying to learn to dance. Like you wouldn't just study the steps in a book, would you? You'd watch people dance,
Yeah.
feel the rhythm, and then try to mimic those movements.
Yeah.
So listening to natural conversations is kind of like that. It helps you to internalize the flow and the nuances of English.
I like that analogy. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So they used a conversation about village versus city life as an example,
Yeah.
which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
Not only is it a relatable topic, but it also kind of subtly introduces vocabulary like pros and cons
Yeah.
that you might not pick up from a traditional English lesson.
Yeah, that's a good point. What's interesting about that is that learning vocabulary in context like that makes it much more likely to stick.
For sure.
You're not just memorizing a word. You're
Sure.
connecting it to a real life situation and understanding the subtle shades of meaning.
Yeah, it's like if you learned a word while using it in a conversation, you're way more likely to remember it.
Exactly.
Okay, so now this deep dive also talks about actually speaking English regularly.
hmm
And they even recommend talking to yourself in English, which I thought was a really interesting tip.
It might seem a little unusual at first, but think of it as like a mental rehearsal for real conversations. It helps you get comfortable with the sounds of the language
Yeah.
and to kind of internalize the grammar without overthinking it.
Yeah, it's like having a private language coach in your head.
Exactly.
Now, they also suggested recording yourself speaking English, which I think could be pretty powerful.
Oh, absolutely. Because then you have a chance to hear how you actually sound, identify any pronunciation challenges, and track your progress, over time.
Yeah.
Plus, the more you hear yourself speaking English, the more confident you'll become in real conversations. It's like having your own personal feedback loop
Yeah.
to refine your pronunciation and fluency over time. And, speaking of real conversations, they actually go on to explore a few specific scenarios.
Okay.
Like one of them was discussing the pros and cons of getting a pet.
Oh, yeah. I thought that part was super helpful because it showed how to apply English in like a really practical context.
Yeah.
They bring in vocabulary like allergies,
Yeah.
mess, potential damage,
hmm
all directly related to the topic at hand.
And that, I think, really highlights how important it is to build a vocabulary that's relevant to you,
Yeah.
to your interests, and to those situations that you're likely to actually encounter.
Right. It's not just memorizing random words from a dictionary.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about having the right tools so you can talk about things that are actually important to you.
Absolutely. Being able to express yourself clearly and confidently in any situation. They even cover a tougher conversation like a relationship breakup, which
Yeah.
I thought was pretty insightful.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it emphasizes how learning English can give you the tools to navigate all kinds of situations, both positive and negative ones. So, it's about having the language skills to communicate your thoughts and feelings, even in moments that are really emotionally charged.
Yeah, it's about connecting with people on a deeper level, regardless of the situation. So for someone who's really trying to improve their English conversation skills, what are like some key takeaways that they can apply from this deep dive?
Well, I would say, first and foremost, it's about making English a part of your daily life. It doesn't have to be hours and hours of study. Even like 15 to 20 minutes a day can make a big difference.
Yeah.
So it could be as simple as like listening to an English podcast while you're commuting.
Yeah.
Or watching a short video during your lunch break.
Totally.
Exactly. The key is to find ways to incorporate English into your routine in a way that feels natural and enjoyable for you. Don't be afraid to kind of experiment with different things and see what works best for you.
For sure.
Yeah.
Some people might prefer visual learning, like watching movies with subtitles.
Mhm.
Others might be more auditory learners, enjoying audiobooks or music. The important thing is just to make it a consistent habit.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of speaking.
Yeah.
Like, look for opportunities to practice with other people,
Okay.
whether it's through those online language exchange platforms or conversation groups, even just like striking up a conversation with someone you meet at a coffee shop,
Right.
that kind of thing.
I know that can feel a little intimidating at first, but most people are really supportive and appreciate the effort
Oh, for sure.
that you're
Yeah.
making to learn their language.
And even if you don't have access to native speakers, there are still ways to practice.
Okay.
Talking to yourself, recording yourself, even just participating in online forums or chat groups can help you build fluency and confidence.
Yeah, those are great ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing that I think holds people back a lot is the fear of making mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
They're so worried about sounding foolish
Yeah.
that they just don't speak at all. What advice would you give to someone who's struggling with that fear?
I think that's super common. It's totally understandable to feel that way. But I think it's important to remember that making mistakes, it's a natural part of learning anything, really.
Yeah.
Not just language. It's how we learn and grow.
Right. Yeah, it's like learning to ride a bike. You're going to fall a few times before you find your balance.
Exactly.
But you get back up and you keep trying.
Exactly. And with language learning, each mistake, it's actually like an opportunity to learn something new
Yeah.
and to improve your skills. It's about changing how you think about mistakes.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing them as failures, see them as feedback.
Yeah, so that instead of getting discouraged by a mistake, just view it as a chance to kind of learn something
Yeah.
and to refine your understanding. And this deep dive actually emphasizes that, like embracing the learning process and not being afraid to experiment.
Yeah, I think that's such an important message. It kind of takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
You don't need to be perfect. It lets you actually enjoy the process of learning
Exactly.
and exploring the language.
Because ultimately, fluency isn't about speaking perfectly. It's about being able to communicate effectively
Yeah.
and confidently.
Yeah.
And that just takes practice and experimentation
Mm-hmm.
and, making mistakes along the way.
If you think about it, language is constantly evolving and changing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it so fascinating to learn.
Yeah, it's not static. It's like a dance where you're constantly learning new steps and kind of improvising as you go.
Mhm.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on English conversation, what's like the one piece of advice you'd give to our listeners who are on this journey to fluency?
I think it's just be patient with yourself.
Yeah.
Embrace those imperfections. And most importantly, don't let the fear of making mistakes hold you back.
Love it. I think that's such a powerful message to end on. It's all about enjoying the journey and celebrating every step you take towards fluency. So keep practicing, keep experimenting, and keep having fun with it.